Thinking about starting your cloud journey with Microsoft Azure? The AZ-900 Microsoft Azure Fundamentals certification is the perfect entry point. And in this video, I'll show you how to pass it with confidence. You'll discover the latest AZ-900 exam topics, free practice questions, and tips to boost your score, even if you're completely new to cloud computing. With cloud skills in demand, this certification can open doors to remote jobs, freelancing, and top-paying IT roles in 2025. Stay till the end and get a bonus tip that most people miss: your shortcut to clearing AZ-900 on the first attempt.
Question number 1. Which Azure service should you use to store certificates? The options are A. Azure Security Center, B. An Azure Storage Account, C. Azure Key Vault, and D. Azure Information Protection. To store any certificate or keys, for that you can use Azure Key Vault. So the correct answer is Azure Key Vault. Question number 2. Your network contains an Active Directory forest. The forest contains 5,000 user accounts. Your company plans to migrate all network resources to Azure and to decommission the on-premises data center. You need to recommend a solution to minimize the impact on users after the planned migration. What should you recommend? The options are A. Implement Azure multi-factor authentication. B. Sync all the Active Directory user accounts to Azure Active Directory, now known as Microsoft Intra ID. C. Instruct all users to change their password. And D. Create a guest user account in Azure Active Directory for each user. So the correct answer is B. So to migrate to Azure and decommission the on-premises data center, you would need to create the 5,000 user accounts in Azure Active Directory. The easy way to do this is to sync all the Active Directory user accounts to Azure Active Directory. You can even sync their passwords to further minimize the impact on users. The tool you would use to sync the accounts is Azure AD Connect, now known as Microsoft Intra ID Connect. The Azure Active Directory Connect synchronization services is a main component of Azure AD Connect. It takes care of all the operations that are related to synchronize identity data between your on-premises environment and Azure AD. Question number 3. To what should an application connect to retrieve security token? The options are an Azure storage account, B. Azure Active Directory, C. A certificate store, and D. An Azure Key Vault. So the correct answer is B. Azure Active Directory. Question number 4. You are planning to deploy several Azure virtual machines and need to ensure that the services running on the virtual machines are available if a single data center fails. What should you will follow? The options are deploy virtual machines to two or more availability zones. B. Deploy virtual machines to two or more availability sets. C. Deploy virtual machines to two or more skill sets. And D. Deploy virtual machines to two or more region. The correct answer is A. So availability zones are physically separate location with their own power, cooling and networking. Within an Azure region, Azure can help make your app highly available through availability zone with 99.99% Azure SLA. If one zone or a data center in a region goes down, other availability zone in the region continue to work. Now the other options are not correct, as deploy virtual machines to two or more region. So region is a geographical area on the planet containing at least one but potentially multiple data centers that are in close proximity and network together with a low latency network. Resources can be hosted in multiple regions for either disaster recovery, planning, or for global reach. Next option, deploy virtual machines to two or more scale sets. So Azure Virtual Machine skill sets let you create and manage a group of load balanced VMs. The number of VM instances can automatically increase or decrease in response to demand or a defined schedule. Scale sets should be used to deploy VMs in multiple availability zones to implement a fault tolerant solution. Next option, deploy virtual machines to two or more availability set is also incorrect, as availability sets ensure your application remains online if a high impact maintenance event is required or if a hardware failure occurs with 99.95% Azure SLA. Availability sets manage resources in the same data center, so cannot provide the highest level of availability in case of data center failure. Question number 5, which of the following services provides up to date status information about the health of Azure services? Select the correct option. The options are A. Azure Service Health, B. Azure Event Hub, C. Azure Monitor, and D. Compliance Manager. So the correct answer is A. Azure Service Health. So Azure Service Health is a suite of experiences that provide personalized guidance and support when issues with Azure services affect you. It can notify you, help you understand the impact of issues, and keep you updated as the issue is resolved. Azure Service Health can also help you prepare for planned maintenance and changes that could affect the availability of your resources. Now, other options which are not correct is Azure Monitor. Azure Monitor helps you understand how your applications are performing and proactively identifies issues affecting them and the resources they depend on. Now next option, Azure Event Hub. So Event Hub is a real-time data ingestion service that's simple, trusted and scalable. Stream millions of events per second from any source to build dynamic data pipelines and immediately respond to business challenges. It does not provide the health status of Azure services. And the last option that is incorrect is Compliance Manager. Compliance Manager enables you to track, assign, and verify your organization's regulatory compliance activities. Compliance Manager provides ongoing risk assessment with a risk based score reference displayed in a dashboard view for regulation and standards. Question number 6. So, this question requires you to evaluate the text inside to determine if it is correct. When you are implementing a software as a service solution, you are responsible for configuring high availability. Select no change needed if the above statement is correct, otherwise, select the correct answer. The options are A. Configuring the SaaS solution, B. Defining scalability rules, C. No change needed, D. Installing the SaaS solution. So the correct answer is configuring the SaaS solution. So configuring the SaaS solution allows users to connect to and use cloud-based apps over the internet. Common examples are email, calendaring, and office tools. Users configure and start using SaaS solution without worrying about installation, scalability, or high availability. Other options are not correct. Option installing the SaaS solution is incorrect, as installation of SaaS solution is the responsibility of Microsoft. Next option, configuring high availability. So high availability of SaaS solution is the responsibility of Microsoft. And the last option is scalability rules. So scalability of SaaS solution is the responsibility of Microsoft. Question number 7. Which of the following option isn't benefit of express route? Select the correct option. The options are A. Consistent network throughput, B. Access to Microsoft Cloud Services, C. Redundant connectivity, and D. Encrypted network communication. The correct answer is D. Encrypted network communication. So Express route does provide private connectivity, but it isn't encrypted. So it's the correct option here. Question number 8. You are developing an application and want to focus on building, testing, and deploying. You don't want to worry about managing the underlying hardware or software. Which cloud service type is best for you? Select the correct option. The options are A. Software as a service, B. Function as a service, C. Infrastructure as a service, and D. Platform as a service. So the correct answer is D. Platform as a service allows you to avoid the expense and complexity of buying and managing underlying application infrastructure. You manage the application and services you develop, and the cloud service provider typically manage everything else. Now the other options are not correct as function as a service. So function as a service is a serverless implementation, provides a runtime environment to execute code written in any language the user is comfortable. Functions are idle when you are only concerned with the code running your services and not the underlying platform or infrastructure. But in this scenario, you are building a custom platform, so PaaS is the correct offering. Next option we have SaaS. So software as a service allows users to connect to and use cloud-based apps over the internet. The examples are email or calendaring. Now the next options, infrastructure as a service. So it is an instant computing infrastructure provisioned and managed over the internet. With infrastructure as a service, you will be managing underlying infrastructure, that is operating system, networking rules, access rules. So it's not a correct solution for here. Question number 9. Which of the following statements are correct for Azure Resource Group? Select three correct options. The options are A. Azure resources inherit the permission configured at the resource group label. B. If you delete a resource group, all the resources in the resource group will be deleted. C. Azure resources can only access other resources in the same resource group. D. If your VM has a read only log applied, you can add a delete log as well. E. Azure resources inherit the tag applied to the resource group label. And F. All Azure resources that are part of a single resource group must be deployed in the same Azure region. So the correct answer is A, B, and A. Question number 10. From the choices below, what is one of the advantages of moving your infrastructure to Azure? Select the correct option. The options are A. The move allows for complete control of infrastructure resources. B. None of the above. C. The move reduces capital expenditure. And D. The move reduces operational expenditure. So the correct answer is C. That is, the move reduces capital expenditure. So public cloud deployments reduce capital expenditure because there is far less infrastructure to buy. You effectively rent only what you use as you use it. Capital expenditure is the upfront spending of money on physical infrastructure and then deducting that upfront expense over time. The upfront cost from capex has a value that reduces over time. Now other options are not correct as the move reduces operational expenditure. So moving to the cloud will not reduce operational expenditure. You will still be paying for used resources and services on monthly basis. Next option, the move allows for complete control of infrastructure resources is also incorrect as in an on-premises data center you own the whole stake. As you move to the cloud, some responsibility transferred to Microsoft. Question number 11. You plan to use Azure functions to implement some business logic in Azure cloud infrastructure. Which two of the following are valid Azure function triggers? The options are A. Web app trigger, B. Queue trigger, C. VM trigger, and D. Blob trigger. The correct answer is B. Queue trigger and D. Blob trigger. So Azure functions trigger are what cause a function to run. Hence, blob and queue trigger is the correct answer. Other options are not the correct one. Question number 12. Which statements regarding Azure SQL geo-replication are correct? Select two correct options. The options are A. A maximum of 4 secondary replicas can be deployed. B. All replicas are writable. C. Secondary replicas can be promoted to primary. And D. A maximum of 3 secondary replicas can be deployed. So the correct answer is A and C. So Azure SQL Server Database is a relational database is a service based on the latest stable version of Microsoft SQL Server Database engine. SQL database is a high performance, reliable, fully managed and secure database that you can use to build data driven application and websites in the programming language of your choice without needing to manage infrastructure. Geo-replication is an Azure SQL database features that allows you to create a readable secondary database in the same region or cross region. Geo-replication uses the always on feature to replicate committed transaction to the secondary database asynchronously. Now other options are not correct as all replicas are writable is incorrect. So only master is writable. Master replicate data to other replicas which can also be used for read only access queries. Next option, a maximum of 3 secondary replicas can be deployed is also incorrect. Up to 4 secondaries are supported in the same or different regions, and the secondaries can also be used for read only access queries. Question number 13. On which blade can you view your Azure service invoices? Select the correct option. The options are A. Cost management, B. Azure AD, now known as Microsoft Intra ID, C. Access control, and D. Subscription. So the correct answer is D. Subscription. So you can download your invoice in the Azure portal or have it to sent by email. If you are an Azure customer with an enterprise agreement, you can't download your organization's invoice. Instead, invoices are sent to the person set to receive invoices for the enrollment. You must have an account admin role for a subscription to download its invoice. Now the steps are as follows as select your subscription from the subscription page in the Azure portal, then select invoices from the billing section, then select download to download a PDF version of your invoice and then select download under the invoice section. You can also download a daily breakdown of consumed quantities and charges by selecting download under the user's details section. It may take a few minutes to prepare the CSV file. All other options are incorrect. Question number 14. Your organization has millions of log entries that it wants to analyze. Which option would be ideal for analysis? Select the correct option. The options are A. Azure SQL Database, B. Azure Synapse Analytics, C. Azure Database for PostgreSQL, and D. Azure Cosmos DB. So the correct answer is B. So Azure Synapse Analytics is the logical choice for analyzing large volumes of data. It gives you the freedom to query data on your terms using either serverless, on demand, or provisioned resources at scale. Now, look why other options are not correct as Azure Cosmos DB. Azure Cosmos DB is a globally distributed schemaless database service that enables you to elastically and independently scale throughput and storage across any number of Azure's geographic regions. Cosmos DB is not an ideal option to collect millions of logs. Next option, Azure SQL Database. So SQL Database is a high performance, reliable, fully managed and secure database that you can use to build data-driven application and websites in the programming language of your choice without needing to manage infrastructure. SQL database is not an ideal option to collect millions of logs. Now the last option, that is Azure database for PostgreSQL. So PostgreSQL database is not an ideal option to collect millions of logs. Question number 15. Which Azure compute resource can be used to deploy and manage a set of identical virtual machines? Select the correct option. The options are A. Virtual machine scale sets, B. Virtual machine availability sets, C. Virtual machine availability zones, and D. Azure Resource Manager. So the correct answer is A. Virtual machine scale sets. So Azure Virtual Machine scale sets let you create and manage a set of identical virtual machines and load balance them. The number of VM instances can automatically increase or decrease in response to demand or a defined schedule. Now the other options which are not correct as Azure Resource Manager. So Azure Resource Manager is the deployment and management service for Azure. It provides a management layer that enables you to create, update, and delete resources in your Azure account. Next option we have virtual machines availability zone. Now availability zones are physically separate location with their own power, cooling, and networking within an Azure region that use availability sets to provide additional fault tolerance. Azure can help make your app highly available through availability zones with 99.99% Azure SLA. Now the last option, virtual machines availability set. Now availability sets ensure your application remains online if a high impact maintenance event is required or if a hardware failure occurs with 99.9% Azure SLA. Availability sets are made of update domain and fault domain. Question number 16. You have two types of applications. One, legacy application that require a specialized mainframe hardware. Second, newer application that can run on commodity hardware. Which cloud deployment model would be the best for you? The options are A. Hybrid model, B. Private cloud, and C. Public cloud. So the correct answer is A. Hybrid cloud. So hybrid cloud provides you the flexibility to run legacy application in your private cloud and newer applications on the public cloud. Hybrid cloud combines public cloud and private cloud by allowing data and applications to be shared between them. Now the other options are not correct as private cloud. So you can run legacy application on the private cloud, but commodity hardware is not possible in the private cloud. Next option, public cloud. A public cloud is a good option for newer applications that can run on commodity hardware, but for legacy applications that require specialized mainframe hardware, you will need to procure and set up a private data center. Question number 17. You want to send messages from the IoT device to the cloud and vice versa. Which IoT technology can send and receive messages? Select the correct option. The options are A. IoT Hub, B. Azure Sphere, C. IoT Central. So the correct answer is IoT Hub. An IoT Hub communicates to IoT devices by sending and receiving messages. Azure IoT Hub is a managed IoT service which is hosted in the cloud. It allows bidirectional communication between IoT application and the device it manages. This cloud to device connectivity means that you can receive data from your devices, but you can also send commands and policies back to the devices. Now, the other options are not correct as IoT Central. So, IoT Central is not concerned with communication between devices and the cloud, though it can initiate this communication via a web based portal. Next option, Azure Sphere. So Azure Sphere creates an end-to-end highly secure IoT solution for customer that encompasses everything from the hardware and operating system on the device to the secure method of sending messages from the device to the message hub. Azure Sphere is not primarily concerned with communication between devices and the cloud. Question number 18. Select three correct statements for Azure Support Plan. Support from MSDN Forum is only provided to companies that have a pay as you go subscription. And the options are A. Azure free account has a limit for the amount of data that can be uploaded to Azure. B. All Azure free accounts expire after a certain period. C. You can create up to 10 Azure free accounts by using the same Microsoft account. D. Azure free account can have an unlimited number of web apps. And E. A basic support plan is included in an Azure free account. So the correct answer is A, B, and E. Question number 19. A company is planning on setting up a solution on the Azure platform. The solution has the following main key requirement: provide a service that could be used to quickly provision development and test environment and minimize waste on resources with the help of quotas and policies. Which of the following would be best suited for this requirement? The options are A. Azure DevOps, B. Azure Event Grid, C. Azure Kubernetes, and D. Azure Dev Test Labs. So the correct answer is D. Azure Dev Test Lab. So it provides self-service cloud environments, that is Windows or Linux, for demo or training purposes to speed up the development process. It can be used to implement many key scenarios, but one of the primary scenarios involves using dev test labs to host development machine for developers. In this scenario, dev test labs provides these benefits. Number 1, developers can quickly provision their development machines on demand. Number 2, developers can easily customize their development machines whenever needed. Now the other options are not correct because Azure Kubernetes. Now Kubernetes is an open source orchestration software for deploying, managing and scaling containers. Azure Kubernetes, that is AKS, is a fully managed Kubernetes service on Azure which makes easy to deploy and manage containerized application and remove the burden of managing the underlying infrastructure of Kubernetes deployments. Next option, Azure DevOps. So Azure DevOps services provides development collaboration tools including high performance pipelines, private Git repositories, configurable Kanban boards and extensive automated and cloud-based load testing. Now the last option, Azure Event Grid. So it allows you to easily build application with event based architectures. It's a fully managed intelligent event routing service that uses a publish subscribe model for uniform event consumption. Event Grid can be used to support your own non Azure based events in real life using custom topics. Question number 20. Which of the following statements is not true about cloud computing? Select the correct option. The options are A. Cloud computing resources are usually limited to a specific geographic regions. B. Three cloud computing deployment models are public cloud, private cloud, and hybrid cloud. C. IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS are example of cloud computing service models. And D. Cloud computing typically decreases your operating expenses. The correct answer is A. So this statement is not true as most cloud computing resources can be distributed to global data centers. So the majority of computing resources are not limited to a specific region. All other options are correct. Question number 21. This question requires you to evaluate the text inside to determine if it is correct. An Azure service is available to all Azure customers when it is in public preview. Select no change needed if the above statement is correct, otherwise select the correct answer. The options are an enterprise agreement subscription, B private preview, C development, and D no change needed. So the correct answer is D no change needed. So in public preview, an Azure feature is available to all Azure customers for evaluation purposes. Anyone can use features available in public preview. Microsoft offers previews of Azure services, features, and functionality for evaluation purposes. With Azure previews, you can test pre release features, products, services, softwares, and even regions. Preview allows users early access to functionality. Additionally, users providing feedback on the preview features help Microsoft improve the Azure services. Other options are not correct as private preview. So an Azure service in the private preview is accessible to a limited set of users only. Users have to request to get access to the private preview services. Now the options development and an enterprise agreement services are not valid service models. Question number 22. Your billing is based on your uses of Azure resources and is invoiced at a minimum of what frequency? Select the correct options: A. Weekly, daily, C. Monthly, and D. Annually. The correct answer is C. Monthly. So a customer's billing frequency is annually, quarterly, or monthly. The billing cycle is determined when a customer signs their agreement. Monthly billing is the smallest billing interval. Question number 23. Why would someone prefer a consumption based pricing model as opposed to a time based pricing models? Select the correct option. The options are: it is always cheaper to pay for consumption than to pay by the hour. B. You can save a lot of money if you don't use the resource often as opposed to having it available for use 24 by 7. C. The pricing model is simpler and easier to understand. D. You can easily predict the cost of the service into the future. The correct answer is B. So in consumption based model, you pay for something based on how much you used as opposed to paying for something no matter if you are using it or not. Azure Function is a good example of consumption based model. Now other options are not correct as the pricing model is simpler and easier to understand. So the simplicity or complexity of a pricing model depends on your solution design, uses, storage, compute, data transfer, and other factors. Next option: it is always cheaper to pay for consumption than to pay by the hour is incorrect as this is not always true, as for a heavy users application, compute heavy function, or in other similar use cases, it's better to reserve capacities to save cost. Now, the last option, you can easily predict the cost of the service into the future, is also incorrect as cost can be predicted in any user's model from Azure pricing calculator. Question number 24. This question requires you to evaluate the text inside to determine if it is correct. Application availability refers to application support for an availability zone. Select no change needed if the above statement is correct, otherwise, select the correct answer. The options are: A. The service level agreement of the associated resources. B. No change needed. C. The overall time that a system is functional and working. So the correct answer is C. So the time that a system is working referred to as the application availability. High availability is the ability to keep services up and running for a long periods of time with very little downtime. Question number 25. Which of the following is a logical unit of Azure services that links to an Azure account? Select the correct option. The options are: A. Virtual network, B. Management group, C. Azure subscription, and D. Resource group. The correct answer is C. Azure subscription. So Azure subscription is a logical unit of Azure services that links to an Azure account. An account can have one subscription or multiple subscription that have different billing models and to which you apply different access management policies. You can use Azure subscription to define boundaries around Azure products, services, and resources. Now the other options are not correct as resource group. So resource group is a unit of management for resources in Azure. allows you to logically group Azure resources together. This allows you to manage the application collectively over its life cycle rather than manage components individually. Next option, management group. So management groups are containers that help you manage access, policy, and compliance for multiple subscription. All subscription in a management group automatically inherit the condition applied to the management group. Now the last option, that is virtual network. So Azure Virtual Network is the fundamental building block for your private network in Azure, which enables many types of Azure resources to securely communicate with each other. So if you want to practice similar types of questions or quizzes, or you want the resources in a PDF format, then you can refer our official websites, that is Tech Cloud Solution. Here you will get the AZ-900, AZ-104 or AWS PDF and quizzes. So I will give you the link of my websites in the comment section. You can refer the link and you can check it out after watching this video. Question number 26. This question requires you to evaluate the text inside to determine if it is correct. A policy initiative is a custom designed policy. Select no change needed if the above statement is correct, otherwise select the correct answer. The options are: A. Requires all resources in Azure to use tags. B. No change needed. C. Is the ability to group policies together. And D. Assign permissions to a role in Azure. So the correct answer is C. So initiative is a collection of policies definition that are tailored towards achieving a singular overarching goal. Initiative definitions simplify managing and assigning policy definition. They simplify by grouping a set of policies as one single item. For example, you could create an initiative titled Enable Monitoring in Azure Security Center with a goal to monitor all the availability security recommendation in your Azure Security Center. Question number 27. Your company with several departments plans to migrate to Azure. All the Azure resources used by each department will be managed by a department administrator. You need to recommend an Azure deployment that provides the ability to segment Azure for the departments. The solution must minimize administrative effort. What should you include in the recommendation? The options are: A. Multiple Azure Active Directory, now known as Microsoft Intra ID. B. Multiple resource group. C. Multiple subscription. And D. Multiple management groups. So the correct answer is C. Multiple subscription. So Azure subscription provide you with authenticated and authorized access to Azure products and services and allows you to provision resources. An account can have multiple subscription, one for each department that have different billing models and to which you apply different access management policies. Now the other options are not correct as multiple resource group. So the key is that resource group should be the life cycle of an application, not to separate department. A resource group manages resources which share the same life cycle. Example: dev environment, UAT environment resources. Now the next option, multiple management group. So management groups are containers that help you manage access, policy and compliance for multiple subscription. In this scenario, you can have one management group with different subscription, one for each department. Question number 28. This question requires to evaluate the text inside to determine if it is correct. Management groups provide organizations with the ability to manage the compliance of Azure resources across multiple subscriptions. Select no change needed if the above statement is correct, otherwise select the correct answer. The options are: A. Azure App Services, B. Azure Policies, C. Resource Group, and D. No change needed. So the correct answer is D, that is no change needed. Question number 29. Your company is planning to deploy an artificial intelligence solution in Azure. What should the company use to build, test, and deploy predictive analysis solution? Select the correct option. The options are Azure Logic Apps, B. Azure Dev Test Labs, C. Azure Machine Learning Studio, and D. Azure Cosmos DB. So the correct answer is C. So Azure Machine Learning Services provides a cloud-based environment that can be used to develop, train, test, deploy, manage, and track machine learning models. It will let you start training on your local machine and then scale out to the cloud. Other options are not correct as Azure Logic App. So Azure Logic App help you automate and orchestrate task business processes and workflows when you need to integrate apps, data system and services across enterprises or organization. Now the last option, Azure Dev Test Labs. So it provides self-service cloud environment for demo or training purposes to speed up the development process. Question number 30. Where can the IT department find reference blueprints that can apply directly to its Azure subscription? Select the correct option. A. Azure compliance documentation. B. Microsoft privacy statement. C. Online services terms. D. Trust center. So the correct answer is A. So the compliance documentation provides references, blueprints, or policies definition for common standards that you can apply to your Azure subscription. Now the other options are not correct as online services terms. So the online services term is a legal agreement between Microsoft and the customer that details the obligation by both parties with respect to the processing and security of customer data and personal data. Next option we have Microsoft privacy statement. So the privacy statement provides details about the personal data Microsoft processes and how the company processes it. Next, last option, Trust Center. So Trust Center is a website resource containing information and details about how Microsoft implements and support security, privacy compliance and transparency in all Microsoft cloud products and services.
Question number 31. Exam note. This question requires you to evaluate the text inside to determine if it is correct. Role-based access control, RBAC, allows users only the rights they need to perform their jobs. Select no change needed if the above statement is correct, otherwise select the correct answer. The options are A. No change needed. B. Azure Security Center, C. Azure Policy, D. Compliance Manager. The correct option is A. Correct answer is Role-Based Access Control, RBAC. Role-Based Access Control provides fine-grained access management for Azure resources, enabling you to grant users only the rights they need to perform their jobs. Other options are not correct. Option Azure Policy is incorrect. Azure Policy helps to enforce rules at the resource group or subscription level. The policy can help to make sure that the organization's standards are followed, but cannot be used to manage resource level permissions. Option Azure Security Center is incorrect. Azure Security Center is a monitoring service that provides threat protection across all of your services both in Azure and on premises. Azure Security Center cannot be used to manage resource level permissions. Option Compliance Manager is incorrect. Compliance Manager is a workflow-based risk assessment dashboard within the Trust portal that enables you to track, assign, and verify your organization's regulatory compliance activities. Question number 32. You wanted to simply use Azure as an extension of your own data center, not primarily hosting anything there but using it for extra storage or taking advantage of some services. What hosting model is that called? The options are A. Hybrid cloud, B. Public cloud, C. Private cloud. The correct option is hybrid cloud. Hybrid cloud is a computing environment that combines a public cloud and a private cloud by allowing data and applications to be shared between them. In this scenario, you will be using your private data center for hosting applications and public cloud, Azure, for extra storage and other services, which is a suitable example of hybrid cloud. Question number 33. Which European nation has its own Azure region that is specifically set for strict adherence to data privacy standard, unlike any other region? Select the correct option. The options are A. UK, B. Germany, C. France, D. Norway. The correct option is Germany. Microsoft Azure Germany is a cloud platform built on the foundational principles of security, privacy, compliance, and transparency. Azure Germany is a physically isolated instance of Microsoft Azure. It uses world-class security and compliance services that are critical to German data privacy regulations for all systems and applications built on its architecture. Other options are not correct as Norway, France, and UK. Regions use Azure public cloud offering. Question number 34. Your company plans to deploy several web servers and several database servers to Azure. You need to recommend an Azure solution to limit the types of connections from the web servers to the database servers. What should you include in the recommendation? The options are A. Azure Firewall, B. Azure Traffic Manager, C. Network Security Group, NSG, D. Application Security Group, ASG. The correct option is Network Security Group, NSG. A network security group, NSG, is a fundamental component for controlling network traffic in Azure. NSGs allow you to define rules that permit or deny incoming and outgoing traffic to specific resources, such as virtual machines, VMs, based on factors like IP address, port, and protocol. In this scenario, you could create an NSG for your database servers and configure rules that only allow connections from the IP addresses of your web servers on the necessary database ports, e.g., SQL Server on port 1433, MySQL on port 3306. Let's look at why the other options are less suitable for this specific requirement. A. Azure Firewall. While Azure Firewall is a powerful network security service that can filter traffic at a much higher level of granularity and across multiple virtual networks, it might be overkill for simply limiting connections between web and database servers within the same or peered virtual networks. NSGs are often sufficient and more cost-effective for this kind of internal traffic control. B. Azure Traffic Manager. Azure Traffic Manager is a DNS-based traffic load balancer that distributes traffic across multiple endpoints. It's used for improving application availability and responsiveness by routing user traffic to the most appropriate endpoint, not for limiting internal connections between servers. D. Application Security Group, ASG. Application Security Groups, ASGs, simplify network security configuration by allowing you to group virtual machines and define network security policies based on those groups, rather than individual IP addresses. While ASGs work in conjunction with NSGs and could simplify the management of rules, the core mechanism for limiting connections, defining allowed ports and sources, destinations, still lies within the NSG rules themselves. An ASG would be a good enhancement to an NSG-based solution for this problem, but the NSG is the direct tool for limiting connection types. The question asks for, what should you include in the recommendation, and NSG is the direct component that limits the connections. If ASG in conjunction with NSG were an option, it might be stronger, but given the choices, NSG is the most direct and fundamental answer. Question number 35. Exam note. This question requires you to evaluate the text inside to determine if it is correct. Microsoft Azure data centers are organized and made available by regions. Select no change needed if the above statement is correct, otherwise select the correct answer. The options are A. Availability sets, B. Geographies, C. Zones, D. No change needed. The correct option is no change needed. Microsoft Azure data centers are organized and made available by region. The region is a geographical area on the planet containing at least one, but potentially multiple data centers that are in close proximity and networked together with a low latency network. Other options are not correct. Option geographies is incorrect. Azure divides the world into geographies that are defined by geopolitical boundaries or country borders. Azure geography typically contains two or more regions that preserve data residency and compliance boundaries. Option availability sets is incorrect. Availability sets ensure your application remains online if a high-impact maintenance event is required, or if a hardware failure occurs with 99.95%. Azure SLA. Availability sets are made up of update domains and fault domains. Option zones is incorrect. A zone is a geographical grouping of Azure regions for billing purposes. Below is the list of available zones. Zone 1 West US, East US, Canada West, West Europe, France Central, and others. Zone 2 Australia Central, Japan West, Central India, Korea South, and others. Zone 3 Brazil South. The Zone 1 Germany Central, Germany Northeast. Question number 36. You have an Azure environment that contains 10 virtual networks and 100 virtual machines. You need to limit the amount of inbound traffic to all the Azure virtual networks. What solution you will recommend, which is cost-effective and require less administrative effort? The options are A. 1 Network Security Group, NSG, B. 10 Virtual Network Gateways, C. 10 Azure Express Route Circuits. D. 1 Azure Firewall. The correct option is 1 Azure Firewall. The Azure Firewall grants server access based on the originating IP address of each request. You create firewall rules that specify ranges of IP addresses. Only clients from these granted IP addresses will be allowed to access the server. Azure Firewall provides many features, including built-in high availability, unrestricted cloud scalability, Inbound and outbound filtering rules. Azure monitor logging. Other options are not correct. Option 10, Azure Express Route Circuits, is incorrect. Express Route Circuit represents a logical connection between your on-premises infrastructure and Microsoft Cloud Services through a connectivity provider. Each circuit can be in the same or different regions and can be connected to your premises through different connectivity providers. Option 10, Virtual Network Gateways, is incorrect. Virtual Network Gateway is used to send encrypted traffic between an Azure Virtual Network and an on-premises location over the public internet. It provides a more secure connection from on-premises to Azure over the internet. Option 1, Network Security Group, NSG, is incorrect. Network Security Group can perform this function, but in this scenario, 10 virtual networks are involved. You can use one NSG for a single virtual network. You can filter network traffic to and from Azure resources in an Azure virtual network with a network security group.
Looking to pass the AZ-900 certification?
Question number 37. Your company has an on-premises network that contains multiple servers and plans to reduce the administrative responsibilities of network administrators by migrating several servers to Azure virtual machines. Identify which two administrative responsibilities will be reduced after the planned migration. The options are A. Replacing failed server hardware. B. Updating server operating systems. C. Backing up application data. D. Managing physical server security. E. Managing permissions to shared documents. The correct option is A and D. In this scenario, the company will be using VMs on Azure, which is the Infrastructure as a Service (IaaS) model. In an on-premises data center, you own the whole stack. As you move to the cloud, some responsibilities transfer to Microsoft. Other options are not correct. Option backing up application data is incorrect. It's the responsibility of Azure users to plan and configure solution which is highly available and back up data properly for disaster recovery. Option updating server operating systems is incorrect. In Infrastructure as a Service (IaaS) model, it's the responsibility of Azure users to timely update operating systems installed on virtual machines. Option managing permissions to shared documents is incorrect. It's the responsibility of Azure users to manage permissions of infrastructure and documents and other content hosted on it. Question number 38. Which Azure storage option is better for storing data for backup and restore disaster recovery and archiving? Select the correct option. The options are A. Azure File Storage, B. Azure Queue Storage, C. Azure Blob Storage, D. Azure Disk Storage. The correct answer is Azure Blob Storage. Azure Blob Storage is your best option for storing disaster recovery files and archives. Question number 39. How can an organization ensure that certain VM workloads are physically isolated from workloads being run by other Azure customers? Select the correct option. The options are: run the VMs on Azure dedicated host. This is not possible. These workloads need to be run on premises. Run the VMs on different availability sets. Configure the network to ensure that VMs on the same physical host is isolated. Correct answer is run the VMs on Azure dedicated host. On Azure, virtual machines, VMs, run on shared hardware that Microsoft manages. Although the underlying hardware is shared, your VM workloads are isolated from workloads that other Azure customers run. Some organizations must follow regulatory compliance that requires them to be the only customer using the physical machine that hosts their virtual machines. Azure Dedicated Host provides dedicated physical servers to host your Azure VMs. For Windows and Linux, other options are not correct. Option configure the network to ensure that VMs on the same physical host is isolated is incorrect. You cannot control VMs placement, the only way is to use dedicated hosts. Option this is not possible. These workloads need to be run on premises is incorrect. This is not true as Azure Dedicated Host provides dedicated physical servers to host your Azure VMs for Windows and Linux. Option run the VMs on different availability sets is incorrect. Availability sets ensure your application remains online if a high-impact maintenance event is required or if a hardware failure occurs. You cannot control VM's placement using availability sets. The only way is to use dedicated hosts. Question number 40. Which Azure resource can be configured to use Apache Hadoop? Select the correct option. The options are A. HD Insight, B. Azure SQL Database, C. Azure SQL Data Warehouse, D. VNet. Correct answer is HD Insight. Azure HD Insight is a fully managed, open-source analytics service for enterprises. It is a cloud service that makes it easier, faster, and more cost-effective to process massive amounts of data. HD Insight allows you to run popular open-source frameworks and create cluster types such as Apache Spark, Apache Hadoop, Apache Kafka.
Select 2 correct statements for Azure subscriptions. The options are A. A company can store resources in multiple subscriptions. B. The virtual machines can be moved to the new subscription only if they are all in the same resource group. C. Each Azure subscription can contain multiple account admins. D. A single account can be associated with at most 10 subscriptions. E. Each Azure subscription can be managed by using a Microsoft account only. The correct answers are: a company can store resources in multiple subscriptions. Each Azure subscription can be managed by using a Microsoft account only. Exam note: this question requires you to evaluate the text inside to determine if it is correct. Azure Firewall secures websites from attacks and generates reports that contain details of attempted attacks. Select No Change Needed if the above statement is correct, otherwise select the correct answer. The options are A. No change needed, B. DDoS protection, C. Network security group, Azure Information Protection AIP. The correct answer is DDoS protection. Azure Distributed Denial of Service. DDoS attacks attempt to overwhelm and exhaust an application's resources, making the application slow or unresponsive to legitimate users. Azure DDoS protection, combined with application design best practices, provide defense against DDoS attacks. Other options are not correct. Let's look why. Option Azure Information Protection, AIP, is incorrect. Azure Information Protection, AIP, helps organizations to classify and protect their documents and emails by applying labels. Labels can be applied automatically by administrators who define rules and conditions, manually by users, or with a combination of both, where users are guided by recommendations. Option Network Security Group NSG is incorrect. Network security groups, NSG, allow you to filter network traffic to and from Azure resources, and not web traffic in an Azure virtual network. Option Azure Firewall is incorrect. Azure Firewall is a fully managed, cloud-based network security service that protects your Azure virtual network resources. It is a fully stateful firewall as a service with built-in high availability and unrestricted cloud scalability. How can an architect allow some users to control the virtual machines in each environment, but prevent them from modifying networking and other resources in the same resource group or Azure subscription? The options are A. Create a policy in Azure Policy that audits resource usage. B. Create a role assignment through Azure Role-Based Access Control, Azure RBAC. C. Split the environment into separate resource groups. Correct answer is create a role assignment through Azure Role-Based Access Control, Azure RBAC. Azure RBAC enables you to create roles that define access permissions. You might create one role that limits access only to virtual machines, and a second role that provides administrators with access to everything. Other options are not correct. Let's look why. Option Create a policy in Azure Policy that audits resource usage is incorrect. Although you might be able to audit how your resources are used, but this will not prevent users to modify resources, so this solution will not solve the problem. Option Split the environment into separate resource groups is incorrect. Resource groups are meant to contain related resources. Although you can likely split the environment into separate resource groups, this approach would likely be more complex than is needed. Which of the following options can you use to link virtual networks? Select the correct option. The options are A. Multi-chassis link aggregation, B. Network address translation, C. Virtual network peering, D. Dynamic host control protocol. Correct answer is virtual network peering. Virtual network peering can be used to link virtual networks. Other options are not correct. A. Multi-chassis link aggregation. This is a data center hardware-level technique used to combine multiple network interfaces into one to increase bandwidth and redundancy. It is not used in Azure to link VNets. B. Network address translation, NAT. NAT is used to translate private IP addresses to public ones and vice versa. mainly for internet connectivity. NAT is not used to link two virtual networks together. D. Dynamic Host Control Protocol, DHCP. DHCP is a protocol that automatically assigns IP addresses to devices on a network. It does not establish links between virtual networks. You are running a virtual machine in a public cloud using IaaS. Which model correctly reflects how that resource is managed? Select the correct option. The options are A. User Management Model, B. Serverless Model, C. Shared Responsibility Model, D. Consumption-Based Model. Correct answer is Shared Responsibility Model. In an on-premises data center, you own the whole stack. As you move to the cloud, some responsibilities transfer to Microsoft. Under the Shared Responsibility Model, the management of the resource is shared between the cloud provider and the end user. The cloud provider is responsible for the cloud services infrastructure, and the end user is responsible for configuring and managing the services correctly. A. User Management Model. This is not a recognized model in Azure or cloud computing terminology. It may imply user roles or access control, but doesn't describe how cloud responsibilities are shared. B. Serverless Model. Serverless abstracts away the server infrastructure completely, e.g. Azure Functions. In IaaS, you do manage the server, VM, so this is not serverless. D. Consumption-Based Model. This refers to billing, not management. In Azure, you pay for what you use, but this doesn't describe the responsibility model. You have an on-premises network that contains several servers. You plan to migrate all the servers to Azure and need to recommend a solution to ensure that some of the servers are available if a single Azure data center goes offline. What should you include in the recommendation? The options are A. Low latency, B. Fault tolerance, C. Scalability, D. Elasticity. Correct answer is fault tolerance. Fault tolerance is the ability to remain up and running even in the event of a component or service no longer functioning. Typically, redundancy is built into cloud services architecture, so if one component fails, a backup component takes its place. This type of service is said to be tolerant of faults. Azure can help make your app highly available through availability zones with 99.99% Azure SLA. If one zone in a region goes down, other availability zones in the region continue to work. Other options are not correct. Option elasticity is incorrect. Elasticity is the ability to automatically or dynamically increase or decrease resources as needed. Option scalability is incorrect. Scalability is the ability to increase or decrease resources for any given workload. You can add additional resources to service a workload, known as scaling out, or add additional capabilities to manage an increase in demand to the existing resource, known as scaling up. Option low latency is incorrect. Low latency describes a computer network that is optimized to process a very high volume of data messages with minimal delay, latency.